the boy is here. Now, this is an older video, but I must continue the time-honored tradition of shitting on AAA game companies. So, journalists rages at gamers over Ubisoft downfall, and even more, shitting on shills, right? Ideological shills, because they don't defend like indie game companies. They don't defend companies that actually make good games. They defend a company like they're contrarian and they purposely defend shitty fucking companies that release bad products. But they attack the consumer just to impose their daddy issues. So let's just give this a watch.
As you probably know, there's been some major Ubisoft news occurring over the last 24 hours or so, stuff that we also talked about in the second segment of the day yesterday, so if you saw that, you should be in the loop with everything. But just to recap super quick, AC Shadows has been delayed to February 2025, Ubisoft admits that Outlaws is underselling, and in a message released to investors, Ubisoft addresses a number of issues at the company and outlines some changes that they're going to try to help fix them. This following an internal probe also going on at Ubisoft to try and understand why the company has been failing so massively over the last number of years. And finally, Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot. Did I get the name right that time? Well, he's made a statement saying that Ubisoft really doesn't have an agenda, and this particular statement has actually enraged a number of armchair activists and similar type of journalists. That's what we're going to be going over in this video, as it should be very entertaining, so I hope you're ready, and let's enjoy.
Yeah, I'm gonna save you time to even try looking that up. The reason why Ubisoft has been failing as a company is they've completely lost consumer faith, right? Like the consumer does not have faith in any Ubisoft product, in any Ubisoft game, or anything. Like not even the shareholders have faith in the company because the company has went down the route of many other AAA games companies where they want to mass produce a product and induct ideology as a shield to defend their shitty fucking product. They want to market to a non-existent consumer base, and because of this, actual consumers, actual gamers, the people who put food on their table, is like, well, why would I buy the 12th Assassin's Creed game? And not only that, they're actively riding controversy just to get clicks. And yeah, these journalists whose entire job is to just shill and defend multi-billion-dollar company. Well, Ubisoft is a multi-million-dollar company now. Let's not forget that, right? Let's call it what it is. They're not a multi-billion-dollar company anymore because of this. And many other AAA companies are going down this route, but Ubisoft is. We are actively in real time seeing the downfall of Ubisoft, and we are praising it because you gotta understand, they put in time, money, and effort to erode the consumer faith in them. And now that has happened, yes, people are absolutely happy. And people are happy because maybe after this wake up call, Ubisoft may actually go back to releasing good products and good games and throwing away ideology that doesn't benefit the consumer. The people that put food on their fucking table. Like, that's what people want. If we have to pass up one or two good games for that to happen, so fucking be it.
We start with Paul Tassi, who's responding to Stefan Totilo, who said, from CEO, regarding polarized comments around Ubisoft, I want to reaffirm that we are an entertainment-first company, creating games for the broadest possible audience, and our goal is not to push any specific agenda. We remain committed to creating games.
Yeah, even if that is the case, creating games for the broadest possible audience, that's idiotic. Like, there's no such thing as a product for, like, let's think about a product that's for everyone, right? Cars? But even some people have faith in a specific model over others. Some people use vehicles for, like, say SUVs are real big in the where I'm at, because it's both family oriented and you can get some work done with it. has a lot of good carrying capacity, whereas vans are more family oriented and pickups are more work oriented. So even cars aren't for everybody. I mean, everyone can have a vehicle. And again, even if you live in a big city where you can just walk to your work, there's no reason. Like, creating games for a broadest possible audience, like that doesn't exist. A product for a broad audience just does. Like, again, because I grew up at a time where games were for children, like they were very niche, right? But at least at that time, good games existed. Like these companies that are now getting blasted, even Ubisoft, were just a couple dudes in their mom's basement that just wanted to put out a game, and now they've decided to become this greedy multi-billion-dollar company that rides ideology and wants to mass produce a product. We remain committed to creating games. Well, yeah, but not for gamers. That's the problem. Top Tilo, right? So I mean,
that everyone can enjoy. That being the statement from Eves that I mentioned earlier, and Paul Tassi responds saying, "It is embarrassing," Ubisoft is admitting, that they're actually rattled by the culture war stuff over Outlaws and Shadows.
yeah, because this is the consumer talking to them. This is the consumer being like, yeah, we've seen this trend, right? That Ubisoft and the other AAA companies are going down, where they're wrapping ideology into video games that don't make the game better, right? They only exist to throw up as a shield, and people are rightfully shitting on them before and because of this. And again, if Ubisoft has always been this way, people would have been like, meh, just another bullshit, let's go. But no, Ubisoft used to make good games. They have decent IPs behind them, and they can do something, but they choose not to. They choose to mass produce art. And because of that, the consumer just absolutely disregards Ubisoft, even as a company.
He had more to say than that, but before we get to that, let me share my opinion on this. Just simplifying all of these issues into culture war stuff seems like a very odd take by Paul Tassi, because this situation involves people in Japan talking about their country being disrespected,
Yeah.
as they're also lied to by a massive corporation regarding their own history. But
Yeah, and this is a corporation that 100% buys into the whole ideology where cultural appropriation is the like one of the 10 commandments of DEI is thou shalt not culturally appropriate. Well, here they are doing literally the exact same thing, culturally appropriating Japanese culture, right? Then they demand your money, and they absolutely are trying to disregard anything that people from Japan talk about, right? And any criticism people from Japan have. And again, these journalist shills are defending them and going after these people.
apparently to Paul Tassi, all of this is just culture war stuff. Now, if you're not familiar with Paul Tassi, he's often been criticized in gaming circles for numerous takes that he's made over the years that seem dismissive of the issues people have with things such as DEI. For example, back when Ubisoft issued their apology to the Japanese community, Paul Tassi had this to say: "When the hyper-forced pushback to your game is the not Japanese culture war talking point of you putting a DI samurai in your game, I would not engage with these people at all." So it also looks like he has a history of dismissing the issues that Japanese people have with AC Shadows. This is, of course, just one more example. I don't want to go through all this guy's tweets, just giving you a little bit more context. It's a truly bizarre thing how many armchair activist types and journalists, etc., are in complete denial about the failures of DEI. In my opinion, DEI is largely something that companies have tried to use for profit motives, attempts to appeal to ESG funds, and things like that. So whenever
Yeah, that and to cover their ass from any level of, lawsuits. And the idea that, oh, if you appeal to the ideology these individuals have, they'd buy the product. Newsflash, they do not buy the product.
Whenever I see someone defending those sort of practices, to me, they just come off as massive corporate bootlickers. Now, as DI has been failing and actually been costing these corporations more and more money in many cases, the topic comes up more and more. And we see more people criticizing that stuff, as well as more people like Paul Tassi seemingly attempting to dismiss those criticisms. Another example of this, albeit perhaps to a lesser extent, were some of the takes that he was making during Concord, where he seemed to be in denial of sorts about the game's terrible player count after launch, wondering if it was even just a glitch or something. It's like it's impossible for some people to admit the issues with the character roster, and how practices such as DEI largely contributed to a number of issues with the game. Now, I'm not saying that all of the issues with Concord were simply DEI related. For example, the price point in the saturated market, sure, these were also contributing factors to Concord's massive failure, but when you see people ignoring the DEI related issues as well, it comes off as ignorant or bad faith. And for those that don't know,
Yeah, they hired the consultants. They had in-house ideologically possessed individuals that are like actively add things into the game that they know is unappealing to gamers, to that market, right? But they added it anyway, and that's what people talk about. Like at this point, if people see ugly fucking character designs like that, like this, they'll automatically just tune out, right? Because again, they demand your money, but they refuse to give you what you want as a product. And they act surprised that you're like, okay, well, I'm not consuming this. Why the fuck would I consume this?
the person Paul Tassi was talking to in those screenshots, Gene Park, who was also seemingly in denial in their own way, claims to be affiliated with the Washington Post. Anyways, back to the current news with Ubisoft and Paul Tassi's takes on this stuff going on right now. He added this to his other tweet, saying, "Outlaws could have starred a guy who looks like Han Solo, and Shadows could have starred a guy who looks like Jin Sakai, and I do not think it would meaningfully change the fortunes of either of those games."
Wow, I mean, I actually agree with that. Again, the Ubisoft's been going down this trajectory, right? And even if they, you know, even if they had a Japanese story starring Japanese people in a Japanese setting, people still wouldn't play the game Assassin's Creed because I guess it's the 12th Assassin's Creed game in the genre. Same thing with Outlaws. Like people has completely lost faith in Star Wars as a property, and again because they put in time, money, and effort to lose that faith, to throw that faith out the window, and then there's a surprise nobody consumes the product. Like I actually agree with him on this. It wouldn't have changed anything, but again, to completely disregard the issues that the consumer has, like I don't really much care for this guy.
I think this would be a larger contributing factor to AC Shadows. Star Wars Outlaws has a number of other issues aside from people just not liking the MC. For example,
Yeah, it's just a boring, vapid open world game that has just game designs that just don't make sense. Like it's the developers trying to impose on the gamer what they can do, not you as the person interacting with the medium to impose on the game, right? It's not a product for you. Like every design of the game is just not for you. That's the problem.
a lot of people said that the gameplay was just boring, especially the stealth segments, which is a large part of the game, and that you didn't feel all that much like an outlaw. Like you were very limited in the so-called immoral stuff that you could do in the game itself. Of course, there's also been numerous glitches, and these are just
Yeah, and this is why you can't even create your character in the Star Wars games anymore. Like they do not want you to play the game however way you want, with your character. Like they want to impose a character on you, and you just effectively the camera viewing everything through their eyes. At least this is what I was told, and I 100% believe it, right? Because you have games where, well, I mean, there are games where you do play a character and that's fine, but there are also games where you can create your own character, like Baldur's Gate, and they're good games, like Path of Exile, Neverwinter, and yeah, Black Myth Wukong. Well, that character doesn't really have a character per se. It's just mute protagonist. But again, you have Witcher, where you play a character and it's still a good game. But most people just choose to create their own character, especially if it's some throwaway whoever the fuck in the Star Wars universe.
A few brief examples of some of the issues that people have with Star Wars Outlaws. But for Paul Tassi to suggest that having an actual Japanese male lead for AC Shadows wouldn't meaningfully change the fortune of the game seems like an absolutely insane thing to say. And once again, it also...
Well, I mean, again, I believe that because, again, no one cares for Assassin's Creed, right? Like, the IP doesn't mean anything. And the same thing for Star Wars Outlaws. Like they don't mean anything. Like, Valhalla was popular just because it wasn't Assassin's Creed. Like, it was Assassin's Creed by name, but, I mean, the combat was anything but.
It seems dismissive towards the issues that many people in Japan, many Japanese people, have with the game. It's really odd that Paul Tassi seems to have a recurring theme where he's very dismissive towards the issues that Japanese people have towards AC Shadows. I do think there's other issues that AC Shadows has. I mean, there's clearly other reasons why Ubisoft delayed the game. The probability of them changing Yasuke at this point seems near 0%. So there's probably other things that they're trying to polish, which also falls in line with the other parts of the statement that they made. Also,
yeah, and again, what you have is accumulating issues, right? It's the fact that it disrespects Japanese culture, the fact that they put in a character that has not even 2 sentences worth of historical text, right? But they claim he's a legendary historical character. It's because of the fact that they made him a samurai, even though Yasuke was not a samurai. It's because of the shills online, the people that, again, they claim is their audience, but they don't buy the game. It's because it's yet another Assassin's Creed game that it's because of the ideology that they again, you have all these issues that accumulate. That's just, even if the game is not out, I know the game's gonna be garbage. And they do too, which is why they pushed it back. They wanted to push it back and hope and pray people shut the hell up about it.
So as I mentioned yesterday, there's also just a general negative perception and a loss of goodwill that Ubisoft has had. So perhaps they're going to try and spend the next few months trying to recover some goodwill at least before releasing AC Shadows. The point I'm making here is there's other issues going on with AC Shadows besides just Yasuke. But again, Yasuke is certainly a huge factor. All of this leads us to an article that Paul Tassi wrote today for Forbes titled, "After Assassin's Creed Shadows Delay, Ubisoft Acknowledges Outlaws Issue, Anti-Woke Pushback." It's funny that he complains about...
I really hate the word anti-woke. It's like, how about normal fucking human being, right? It's like anti this, anti that, anti who. It's like, normal fucking people's consumers push back via Forbes, right? I changed this for you, Paul. You can thank me later.
Culture war stuff, even when that label is oversimplifying the issues going on and is also, as I mentioned, rather dismissive towards the issues at large. But then he's also going to simultaneously write an article that's like, oh, it's just anti-woke pushback. Seems like this guy is actually propagating culture war stuff, if anything. The article goes over some of the stuff that we've already covered here in this video and others, so I'm skipping all that. And let's check out this section where he writes, "Then, Ubisoft surprisingly, tacitly acknowledged the narrative that its games have become too woke or agenda-driven, according to a segment of the internet," and posting that statement from Eves where he denies Ubisoft having any specific agenda. He then writes, "While Ubisoft already apologized to its Japanese audiences over some questionable promotional materials for Shadows, the pushback was also about the inclusion of Yasuke as one of the 2 leads, a legendary black samurai, where there was an ensuing debate of whether he was actually a samurai, and a stated idea that it shouldn't be starring him at all."
And again, I don't care because at first they touted it as historically accurate, so this wouldn't make sense. But then it's like, okay, we're not historical, but it's a legendary historical character. But then we're like, okay, well, he doesn't have 2 lines to even declare him legendary, so whatever. Then they said sorry about that, right? And now, again, I don't know what they're going to... Like, I don't care if they made him a samurai in the game. I really don't. It's just the fact that they lied to you, they tried to push a narrative, they culturally appropriated Japanese culture, and then said, sorry, we were like a multi billion dollar company full of just a bunch of white dudes believing they understand more about Japanese culture than the fucking Japanese, right? Again, we have an accumulating issue that, again, for some reason, is being completely washed over.
It's pretty funny
That's the issue.
that despite all of the evidence coming out that Yasuke really wasn't conclusively a samurai, something that Ubisoft themselves has also admitted, here's Paul Tassi claiming he was not just a samurai, but a legendary one. He goes on to write, there was similar pushback to Kay Vess leading Star Wars Outlaws as a woman, and a not attractive enough woman at that. So he's really not going to mention that the main issue here was that Ubisoft made her less attractive. Like, they went out of their way to make Kay Vess less attractive than the actress that she's based on. Something that's very bizarre and certainly worth pointing out, but hey, Paul Tassi ain't going to mention that part here.
Yeah, and then he just probably just disregards any other games like Stellar Blade, right? You know, where they had a hot female character, and then this exact same type of individual went after that game, you know, and the exact same journalist went after that game for daring to have a beautiful female character, right? Like, they like to say gamers are sexist. No, these companies are sexist, right? We are fine with hot female characters.
He then says, no historical accuracy complaints there, as it was pretty straightforward woke/DI talking points there, but it is surprising to see Ubisoft entertain this at all. There's another article I found that has very odd coverage, to say the least, regarding all this Ubisoft stuff. This one, from fastcompany.com. The author Chris Morris writing, video game maker Ubisoft in chaos after anti-DEI backlash. The assassin...
What? Anti-DEI? More like normal fucking people disliking ideology. Like, that's what DEI really is at the end of the day. It's this ideological push to impose values in art, but that never works. Like, and again, it doesn't matter if your values are the best on the planet. Like, if you impose that in your art and demand people consume it, that's never going to work, right?
and Creed game maker delayed its biggest launch of the year, reduced forecasts, and is facing calls to sell in what is being called an incel victory. Okay, first of all, I haven't seen anyone say
incel. Oh my fuck! They use words that nobody uses, and incel victory. What the fuck does that mean?
Victory anywhere. Seems like this guy just made that up. And once again, I'll point out how these sort of people come off as such bigots, man. Dismissing the issues that Japanese people have with this game. Very reasonable and understandable issues. And then saying this is like an incel victory, seriously? These virtue signaler types are so hypocritical. And they're also just weird. I mean, who even talks like that? Oh, it's an incel victory. Like, either this guy...
A small, fringe, radical group of ideologically possessed individuals on Twitter with daddy issues and mental illnesses in their bio. Like, that's the type of people that speak like this. Like, no one in real life speaks like that.
Made that up? Or this must be some, like, termly online Redditor talk here or something. Moving on. Because, spoiler alert, it's as bad in the article itself, or arguably even worse. He pulls out the classic, oh, the backlash is just from the far right. My gosh, these people are boring with their rhetoric, saying the same nonsense for years and years and years, and they wonder why people don't listen to them anymore. Check it out. Right here he says, the bookings shortfall was technically due to the delay and disappointing sales of Star Wars Outlaws. However, the underlying reason for both of those, at least in part, is the far-right opposition to diversity and inclusion. Oh yeah, my gosh, what a joke. Yeah, diversity and inclusion, something that corporations love to gaslight people about. Oh, hey, we really care about this stuff. Not really. We just...
Yeah, again, they do this just because, you know, that covering their ass for legal reasons, you know, giving lip service. Like, at first it was just lip service, but then these individuals, like they actively try to push their worldviews on everybody else. And the problem isn't entirely the worldview because again, diversity has always existed, even in like the 1970s in art and in fiction, right? These people that have an ideology that they want to impose, and the ideology just demands they chase the grift, and if you have a gender studies degree, like you only are able to interact with the world through one way, and that's actively seeking villains, actively seeking demons. Like you erect demons in your head and you impose them on specific people, then you attack those people. Like this is how they are taught in university to interact with the world, and no one with a fully functioning frontal cortex actually acts like that, right? And again, you've seen this with like the evangelical Christians who, you had that fringe, odd group of them that do the exact same thing. So what I'm saying is it's literally the same handbook being used. Or with the Christians, at least there's an end goal. Like there is no end goal with this. Maybe except to extract wealth and to ride ideology to uplift yourself.
Want money, but hey, if you criticize these corporations, you're apparently far right for criticizing corruption in corporations.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, Outlaws, which has a female lead character, received mostly solid reviews from professional critics. Oh, professional critics. But many players gave it a 0 rating out of 10 on Metacritic, citing quote-unquote forced DI narratives, and claiming the developers, quote, spent more time on the woke culture than on the story and gameplay, unquote. Some players were also unhappy with the optional season pass model that tacked an additional $40 onto the game's price for extra missions. The review bombing, driven by anti-DI backlash, seemingly worked and set off a chain of events that led to Wednesday's announcement. I forgot to mention this. In the intro of the article, he says, Ubisoft abruptly canceled its appearance at the Tokyo Game Show and postponed all press previews of the upcoming Assassin's Creed Shadows. Wednesday, we learned why. Anti-DI backlash has sent the company spinning. So for
yeah, the company is learning to fear the consumer, which is what we're trying to get. Like we're trying to get back to the days where companies were at the behest of the consumer, not the other way around. Right? Not the days where companies just didn't demand to exist and try to just launder funds and launder money through ESG funds to just exist and push vapid fucking products on the market. Like, that's what we want to get back to. And because companies have failed to do that, we just assume, any other game that comes from these companies are going to be garbage. And if we see the dog whistles, we're going to call them out. If we see DEI or any initiative that is anti-gamer, anti-consumer, like we're going to call it out. Like, I need you to understand, right? This is the consumer versus the company. And they're trying to do the Gamergate thing where they're trying to throw a label on it and shove it to the side. Like, it's just anti-DEI, right-wing, blah, 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 blah. And it's surprising how, like, even in, like, Europe and those, like, everyone has just the same right-wingers. Like, it's not just normal people that care about themselves, their family, and how to provide for them is right-wing.
As funny as that is, there's also a lot more going on with Ubisoft than the anti-DI stuff. Like, for example, they've been mismanaged heavily for years. But leave it up to this so-called journalist veteran to not acknowledge that, and to try and smear all of the Ubisoft critics as a bunch of far-right incels, as he seemingly attempts to defend this massive corrupt corporation. And that's about all that I have to say on this topic. Just truly bizarre stuff from these journalists. However, I suppose that's to be expected in this day and age, and part of why they're now such a disgraced profession. Let me know what you think about all of this stuff in the comments. As always, thank you so much for tuning in, and if you enjoyed my coverage, consider liking and or subscribing to the channel for more, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, and again, it's something you have to keep hammering home, right? The fact that the consumer is now speaking out again, even basic bitch fucking normies are speaking out against these companies and being like, Okay, so when are you gonna start catering to me, the person who puts food on your fucking table, and not just this fringe ideological group of weirdos that go clickety clack on the keyboard just to, I guess, shill for you? Cause like, when are you gonna start doing that, huh? Oh, never. Well, I guess we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing. But that's all I gotta say about this. See ya.